So in today's episode, we're not going to be discussing one property, but we're going to be discussing two.
I think John is the best, well-prepared guest we've ever had on this show.
Every day matters with this property.
You need to ensure that it's been served properly.
Is my range, and I think it will sell. Do I think it's a deal? No, unless it's for the scenario that I painted where I thought, well, actually, someone could think this is a very easy step to get.
Good one to discuss, because a lot of people don't know what happens once it comes to an end.
In the next episode, John is no longer with RFED.
So welcome back to Property Auction Hunters, and today we have not just one guest, but two guests. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but to start off with, I'm going to say what I know about them, and they can completely dispel that or big themselves up even more. We'll leave it very open to interpretation. But we have Olivia Boulting, who is the auctioneer and principal, is what I would call her, at Auction House Southwest. So that's Devon and Cornwall all the way up to Bristol. And in the time that she's been there, she's absolutely increased the number of lots going into the auction and revolutionised the team. So big fan of Olivia. That's why we've asked her here today. She is the first auctioneer and our first female guest, of which we are absolutely proud to have you here. We have John O'Callaghan, who is principal. Again, I would call a principal, solicitor and founder of Ronald Fletcher Baker, and is all things property law is how he's been described to us. And we've been working with Ronald Fletcher Baker for several years. They've sponsored the book and partnered with the book in the first instance, and in the rewrite that we're doing now, they're doing the same thing. So it's our first solicitor guest. So we're going to be looking at some lots that have some intricacies, and John is going to be pointing out some of the things that he would be looking out for from the legal side of things, and what he recommends investors look at as well. But before we go any further, we also have Piotr and Saif. You know us, but there will be a little intro on all of us, of course. So Olivia, hello, introduce yourself.
Hello. Well, I think you did well for me there. I'm not very good at bigging myself up as an auctioneer, but really happy to be here. So really nice to be able to join.
Excellent. John.
Thank you, John. Again, I don't think I could put this better than you, perhaps more modestly.
Can I just say, I think John is the best, well-prepared guest we've ever had on this show. Honestly, he brought papers with him. He's printed things out. But like 100%, 10 out of 10 for being well prepared. I love that.
I was a court litigator many years ago, and I'm accustomed to turning up with.
I felt like I was going into court with a clerk or something. So yeah,
so I wasn't completely sure what to expect. But it looks in the event like we're going to discuss a lot of auction lots without actually seeing them. So
amazing.
We'll have to see how that.
Is that out your comfort zone a bit as a solicitor, kind of not having every single bit of information?
I'm trying to store it all up here, don't I?
Yeah. Excellent.
Now today we're going to be reviewing some properties, but and obviously it's before the auction. Sometimes the legal packs are not complete, but at the end of the videos, actually after the auction, we're gonna summarize what happened to those lots and how our predictions were right, not right, far away from the truth. Who knows?
Brilliant.
So these episodes, part of the fun, and probably the only reason Piotr is doing this, is we have to do, it's called Auction Deal or No Deal. So it's very much like the TV show, but we're not ripping off Channel 4, of course. So we're going to be reviewing these properties, pointing out what we like about them, what we think people should be paying attention to, highlighting intricacies that others may not see, and angles, etc. And at the end, when we review these properties, we're going to go around in the semicircle that we're in now, and we're going to say, do you think it's a deal or no deal? And if you think it's a deal, do you think it's going to sell? If you don't think it's a deal, do you think it's going to be postponed, withdrawn, go back on the open market? And it's a bit of fun. And the people that are watching this on YouTube or on any of the other platforms, they do like to interact with that bit as well. At the moment, Piotr is the most successful guesser. Myself and Saif have
moderate success.
Well, we have the issue of focusing on what we would pay for the asset rather than what we think someone would pay for.
I'm a better buyer than a seller, let's put it that way.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and we do have a wide range of properties to look at.
Yeah.
So let's kick it off. So in today's episode, we're not going to be discussing one property, but we're going to be discussing two. So that's a 2-for-1 bonus. You're absolutely welcome. Aren't we lovely and kind people? Both properties are short leases. Both properties are in London, but there are two major differences. One of the short lease properties has only 9 months left on the lease. By the time you complete, that's probably going to be 6 months. And we're going to be talking about the intricacies around buying a property with a lease that low. The second property certainly looks nicer, has 57 years left on the lease. And this one, we are all quite aggressive on pricing. So make sure you watch this one, because you're going to learn quite a lot about leasehold reform, the process of extending leases, and what to look out for. So if you're looking at short leases, this is the episode for you.
So right now we're going to be looking at two short lease flats, and they are distinctly different. One of them is in East London in Leighton, and it's a 60-year lease from 1964. So it's got 9 months left on the lease. So basically, if you end up buying this property on the 12th of March and then complete in April, you have 5 months?
Yeah,
6
around
months.
about 6 months.
Yeah, around about 6 months. So actually, like every day matters with this property. So this is a very interesting lot. And then the second one will be a property in Tooting, which is also a 1-bedroom flat. It's slightly different. It's got 57 years on the lease, and it's rented out, producing 14,400. So we're going to look at those two distinct properties, but both on short leases. And we're going to discuss how we can make money from this. If we can make money.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay, brilliant. So first property, 1-bedroom flat.
Yeah.
Leighton. And it's approximately 55 square meters, about 600 square feet, more or less. It's got a garden, and it needs refurbishment. I think it's worth around 300k done up.
With a long lease.
With a long lease.
Yeah.
At the moment, it's got 9 months left on the lease. It's not much, but maybe the question for you, John.
Is it vacant?
It's vacant, yes. So it's vacant. So question for you, John, like what's going to happen in November when the lease comes to an end?
Well, it will revert, or it could revert to a simple occupational tenancy. But if it depends who the owner is, if no one actually lives there, it will simply expire, and it will revert to the freeholder.
So on the occupational tenancy side of things, is there a minimum amount of time that you would have had to have lived there in order to qualify for that?
Gosh, I know I came prepared, but quite not.
Didn't have the right paper for that one.
Not quite for that one. No, it's the question. It's a matter of the actual owner of the lease living there,
Right.
rather than a tenant of the owner of the lease.
I see. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So if the owner of the lease is resident, then instead of being an owner at the termination of the lease, they will become a tenant, and then they will have to have a rent assessed, and they'll have to pay that rent.
So it becomes a reg, basically, a regulated tenancy.
Effectively, it becomes a regulated tenancy. Yes.
But if you're not living there, then you effectively are handing over that lease to the freeholder.
Yes.
Wow.
Can we run some crazy scenarios past you?
Theoretical, but maybe real.
This is a very obscure area. This really doesn't happen, if you know what I mean.
Just to be clear, this is not legal advice. So we are covering John here. Don't worry, John.
If I'd known this one, I would have dusted off an old textbook.
In the next episode, John is no longer with RFPB.
So let's say it's guided at 15,000 per annum. The rental income on something like this would be, I don't know, 15k per annum, or maybe let's say 18k. So if I was to rent it on AST, so let's say I will buy it for 15k, and scenario number one, I buy it and then I rent it out and I put it on a 3-year tenancy to someone. What happens then? Can I do that? Because the thing is, if I was to do something like that, the tenant, as a person taking the tenancy from me, they don't know that I've got like a 9-month lease. What will happen to them?
What will happen to the occupational tenant?
Yes.
Well, when the lease expires, I don't know. I'll have to look this up. When the lease expires, the occupational tenant, I don't think, can have any better tenancy than the the owner.
Do they effectively become a squatter at that
I
point?
think so, possibly, yes.
Yeah.
But this is the kind of stuff that one looks up.
Well, that would be difficult because an AST would give you quiet enjoyment of the property, whereas if it reverts back to the freeholder's, well, you're now in my property, and I think that's a very difficult situation.
Look,
I would agree.
this stuff doesn't happen, which is why
No.
this kind of this technical law is not at my fingertips.
This is where I'll send my wife for a holiday in Leighton for a couple of months. She'll live down in Leighton for a couple of months. But it's a business expense.
Generally speaking, it doesn't happen. So from our point of view, looking at the legal pack on this, what you'd really be wanting to see is that they have in place a proper process to get an extension of the lease.
Section 42, effectively.
In other words, a Section 42 notice, which is a request for a new lease to be entered into.
Yeah.
So that means having served that notice, and because it's so critical, you'd really have to examine that documentation. So you wouldn't be wanting to see a scan, a photocopy of something that looks like a notice. You'd be wanting to analyze whether that notice was valid.
Yeah.
It's a very technical area. Notices can become invalid for often small reasons.
Yeah.
You need to ensure that it's been served properly. So service, again, legal, technical process of ensuring that a document has been sent through whatever means, personal.
But John, if I was going to buy this and I said to you, this is a situation with it, obviously from a legal perspective, how can you ensure that the figure that's put on the Section 42, the premium that's basically been proposed, if you were going to try and protect me as a buyer, what would you do? Would you email the other side solicitor and say, has there been a counter notice produced, etc.?
Well, yes. I think I suppose it depends on how good the pack is. What has been produced, but you want to see that process has been engaged. The likelihood is that the freeholder is looking for a return on this.
Yeah.
You do see situations where properties are in private ownership sometimes, where a freeholder simply has faded away, has disappeared. Happens.
Yeah, absentee freeholders. Yeah.
So there's again, you need to overcome that, but you need to know that process is secure.
Yeah.
And I think in this case, you said a figure of 84,000 has been put on
84 and a half. Yes.
Yeah. Which seems too low. But
for 9 months, it's way too low.
Yes, because basically it should be more or less the value of the property.
Because basically that premium is a compensation for the leasehold, for the freeholder, giving you that extended 90 years.
Well, yes. I mean, but it's run down, hasn't it? Really, to the bitter end. It's really about to expire. So I would think it's a technical calculation that is done by surveyors, and even then it's argued over.
Yeah.
But my guess is it's not going to be very far off the actual market value.
Probably more like 200,000
of a lease for whatever 90 years, which is what the lease will be extended to.
Got you. Olivia, any thoughts on this?
No, not really. I think a lot of we obviously get quite a few down in the southwest. They're obviously quite a lot cheaper. Typically we're like 40, 50 grand for a flat. So, but yeah, it's just, I think it's making sure people cross the T's and dot the I's for those and have a good solicitor.
Have you ever had anything this short in your auction, or what's been the shortest lease you've ever sold?
Typically, we look at maybe 50 years plus, I think. You're looking at that, nothing this short. So it's a good one to discuss, because a lot of people don't know what happens once it comes to an end. Yeah. So
I think with this property, what's the most challenging is that the guide price is so low, it will attract hundreds of people. There will be hundreds of bidders for this property. And there's been a report recently released by EIG saying that approximately 60% of the bidders don't read the legal pack. A bet on this property would be 92%.
Well, in reality, the actual figure is in the mid 80s.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more than 80, almost 85% of people that are bidding haven't actually viewed the legal pack. And then the number of actual winning bidders, that jumps up again. I think it's late 80s to early 90s. When you think about the repercussions, it's absolute insanity. Yeah.
I mean, traders are not reading legal packs nowadays because they're registered, they're bid registrations, so they're registering for everything. They'll bid on everything and then figure out the legal pack later. But they're using their strength and their positioning on that. But ultimately, this is going to, 15 grand guide anywhere around London is going to bring in a hell of a lot of naive buyers. And I think you asked the question at the beginning, how do you make money on this? Well, you need to be the seller. You need to, if you're the seller on this, you're going to be making a hell of a lot of money. But the reality is, I'll probably kick things off. I think this could go for £90,000. I really do. I think someone will pay £90,000 for it, not realizing now whether they complete is a whole nother subject. But I think someone will exchange on it on the day of auction for £90,000, in my opinion.
Wow.
I think the other concern you've got as well, which when you've got a lot of naive buyers coming through, is they will read that figure on the Section 42 and assume that's what the cost is going to be.
Correct.
So they'll factor it in, but not realizing that actually hasn't been agreed yet.
Yeah.
So I think that's, again, where they might go over.
Don't sit on the fence, Olivia. Give us a number. Come on. Could be 100, could be 200. Who knows?
I think if people get carried away, I'm going to go with 80.
80. Nice. Keeping it tight. Okay,
Yeah.
keeping it tight.
Well, it's a flat in London, which, as you said earlier,
5 months.
don't come up at this
5
level.
months left. It's like Airbnb.
I know,
Without
but
the refurb.
But someone again, I think, is going to look at that headline figure on that notice. It's going to be, they're going to think there's a legal process in place, and that's effectively what they have to pay.
Yeah.
What they don't know, of course, is that this process is all secure, and they probably don't know that there's a lot of costs to be added to that as well. So I suspect, like you, it will go to someone who doesn't have their wits about them. But then possibly it will be rescued, as it were, when it goes through a legal process, and someone will lose their deposit.
So what's your phone number for the buyer?
No, not this one, no.
If you're buying this, do not contact me.
I think someone will pay 100k for it and lose 10k.
Okay.
Wow.
Brilliant. We're getting tighter and tighter on those figures. Come on. Where are we at?
Look, with these are always difficult because the three things that we look at, we like short leases. We would buy short leases. One thing that we look at is for the amount that we're paying, if there's how many years are left, can we recoup that by renting it out over that period of time? And in this situation, the answer is no. I don't think you can, not with the transactional cost.
Unless you rent it out to a wheat.
Unless you're an horticulturist, if they want it, then maybe
Because of the refurb involved in it, it's a heavy refurb.
it's a
job.
heavy refurb as well. But I mean, it's later. It's a good part of London. It's an up and coming area. The capital values are nice. Blah 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 blah. But it's not situated well. It's perfect for auction. And if someone does understand the occupational lease, that becoming a reg on that, if someone's looking to get on the housing ladder and thinks, well, if I pick this up for £50,000 and I become a regulated tenant, which is a security of tenure above and beyond an AST, and they thought, well, actually, it's a very short step to get up onto the market. I have to cover the cost of a refurb myself, blah, blah. All these different considerations are essential. But with that being said, I think it's a very tricky part. I only took a glance at that notice, and ignoring the premium that they put on there and the way they put that premium on there, that notice is invalid.
That was a copy-paste job.
It looked like someone had Tipexed out a number and written it back on in Biro. That is not a
red flag.
It's a big issue. Any short lease that we look at, we send through to the team at RFB. We talked to David Burns, who's an absolute genius with this stuff. Obviously, the premium and the way it's served and the validity of the notice, I think these are all red flags. But saying that, a good number of years ago, Piotr was, I think you're in India or coming back from India or something like that. And there was a short lease flat that when I was the auction manager, Auction House London, there was a short lease flat there and it was going absolutely crazy. There were over 150 people registered on the legal pack looking at this seriously. The auction was packed and you could see a far chunk of them. It was towards the beginning of the auction. We're interested in this lot. But anyway, the vendor was nervous and said, can we get someone to do an offer pre-auction or maybe even an underwrite? So I called up Piotr, who was midway back flying from Kerala or wherever he was. And he said, I may have someone that will do this, but it was, I think, like 90,000, something like that. It was something
to be at 90 and they had to be 120.
Yeah, so there was a bit of a difference. So I hope you don't mind the anecdote. But it went to the auction and there was this lady, she couldn't have been more than 5'9", nothing, right? But she had her hand in the air, like raised, like resolute the whole way through. Won it for like 190 something.
92, yeah.
192, and this was just off the A46 in Brent. And actually, at the time, Ronald Fletcher Baker were the solicitors that were in the room. So this lady won it. She goes over, she fills out all the paperwork, signs, puts the money down, and we say, "Oh, have you got a solicitor?" She says, "I haven't got one yet." I said, "We'll go and speak to so and so over here." And yeah.
Have you realised what you bought? Did you say that to her?
And I'm a big fan of everyone that came and sat at the desk. I wanted to know what they were buying, why they were buying it, have a chat with them, make them feel good. And I just said, "Oh, what did you plan on doing?" And she goes, "I'm going to refurbish it. I'm going to live in it." I said, "Well, that's amazing." I think it was like 14 years left or something. 18 years left. So it was ridiculous. And I thought, well, actually, if she's going to live in it and she's going to live in it for a long time, maybe that suits her. I didn't understand the price that she paid, but I tried not to judge. But apparently, when she found out what was involved, I think she did speak to David, she blew her top. So my gut feeling is, yes, there are going to be people that don't understand the ramifications of a 9-month lease left on it, or the costs or the process. And I think this has got the potential to maybe 8 to 10 times guide. I think you're looking at maybe 130 to 150 is my range. And I think it will sell. Do I think it's a deal? No, unless it's for the scenario that I painted where I thought, well, actually, someone could think this is a very easy step to get some form of tenure.
I don't think you're going to get anyone that sophisticated.
I don't think so either. But in that scenario, I can see this as being a deal.
Yeah, 100%.
In all other scenarios, this is not a deal, but it will sell.
Wow. I think Save just really opened up this positivity and you guys just took it to another level. I think I'll bring it down to earth. I think it's going to sell for 57. More or less within 5%, and it's 5 months left on the lease. I mean, it will drive a lot of interest, but not that much.
But don't forget, look, we've got the reforms happening in this space. So the whole lease extension reforms are happening. Do I think they're going to completely abolish the kind of marriage value? I don't think so, because you're going to have a lot of the big institutions kicking off. But I do think they're going to cut that maybe by half, maybe by a bit more. Don't know how they're going to do the actual calculations, but I think that will give people a bit more bullishness that they're kind of trying to speculate on something like this maybe as well. So actually it's the wind is kind of blowing in the right direction for this, rather than if this was a freehold and you were buying a ground rent and you had a short lease with a potential premium. I think that's actually the opposite at the minute. So yeah, I think there's a bit of positivity around it, but let's see. I mean, similar to this,
it's not a hold your breath situation, because there were people that have been trying to gauge the winds of the leasehold reform since 2011. That's how long they've been running this reform for. That's how long it's been kicked back out. Maybe they're getting close to something, but actually there's a lot of stink around it.
I'd be inclined to agree. I mean, don't hold your breath, because as you say, there is so much value and security tied up at institutional levels.
Yes, yeah.
In freehold investments,
it underwrites pension funds.
Exactly.
But yes, would someone who has half an inkling as to that's going on and whatever, maybe they would attribute some kind of let's see what happens value to it. But
so this is a flat with 9 months left on the lease, 5 months, whatever this is. Like the actual number changes every day. But then there's another one, which is one in Tooting. It's a 1-bedroom flat, 35 square meters, let producing 14,400, and it's got 57 years left on the lease. I think it's also worth around 300k.
What's it guided at?
It's guided at 190.
Okay, it's a pretty high guide.
I like this one because the building is attractive, the areas are good. Tooting's a really nice area. Internally, it looks lovely. I mean, it's you'd move in there. I'd live in that flat.
35 square meters, say.
Oh, okay. I won't bring the family with me. Okay, all right. If it looks like I'm hitting up for a divorce, I'll start letterboxing that place. I could live here. It's nice. So what I like about it realistically is, if you're into short leases or you want to get into short leases, you haven't done it before. Between 79 and 53 years is a real good golden spread to dip your toe into short leases. Because the moment it goes below 52 years, you then have to, doesn't matter what the extension process is, it becomes problematic. It's another one of those tipping points where the value of the marriage value jumps up again. So that's generally speaking 80 years, 50 years, 30 years, 21 years, 14 years, 7 years, and then it goes
9 months.
exponentially. 9 months. So if you're thinking, I want to try short leases because for whatever reason you've got a really good solicitor that knows how to get that transaction across the line, and you think you're going to make a margin with a BRRR, whatever you're going to do, then between 53 and 79 is a really good tester point to go, I'm going to try a short lease. When you've done 3 or 4 of those, I think you can be comfortable doing anything from 52 to 31 because the metrics change slightly. You can get funding on these things, believe it or not. It's expensive. It can be difficult. But having that track record of 53 to 79 years of doing a couple of those is actually really good. So if there are short lease investors that are looking, or people that are looking to get into it, I think 57 years is actually a really good point in that whole value arc of the marriage value. I think it's a really nice point to get in at.
And you've got the income element of it coming in, which is quite nice. So, your worst case scenario is 50 whatever years of income as a worst case scenario. But the one thing I would say is I don't think it's guided very well. I think 190 is slightly high on the guide. So I think it could be one of these ones that actually doesn't attract loads of people. My general kind of inclination of short leases is they're always best to sell them. I've never really seen loads of people buy them and make money from them in auction. I've always seen kind of the whole smoke and mirrors of the Section 42 premium that are attached to them. But I actually think this is an opportunity where someone could buy it because it's not guided really, really low. It's not going to have loads and loads of multiple bidders like the 15 grand one that we saw. So I think it could be a good opportunity for someone.
And also it's tenanted and it's not that much of an amazing yield.
Yeah.
Because it's like 7.5% maybe.
Yeah.
And I think maybe slightly under let, but if you get another £2,000 per annum, that's about it.
Yeah. So I think for me this will sell, but it will probably sell sort of around about the kind of reserve, so about 10% above, maybe about 200 to 205, in my opinion. Olivia?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think if it was guided lower, it is one that is a good investment for someone. But like you said, I think it's just not attractive enough to get everybody through the door. So I think it'll probably just peak over, maybe just over the reserve.
If you were taking this on as an auctioneer, and what would you advise your client if you were going to be wanting to guide this to try and attract enough people, but at the same time, bearing in mind that they're going to have to want to set their reserve at a reasonable level as well?
Yeah, it's having the reserve at a reasonable level for them, and trying to meet in the middle. You probably, what is it at the moment? It's 190, isn't it? 170, 160, that sort of level. I think if you had that sort of level, you would get much more.
I was going to say 150 for me is probably where you're going to get a lot of the interest. So about that's interesting. So.
I won't give you a price, so it's a bit out of my zone. But what was actually quite good about this one in terms of the presentation of the material in the pack, it was well presented, and the contract is well written, and the process around the Section 42 notice, which has to be, the existing owner has to get that ball rolling, because you need to own it for 2 years before you qualify, is quite good. So that's all in place. It's well presented. It's going to be assigned. There's a bit of cost attached to that. I think it's an institutional landlord in this case. So you shouldn't, a buyer shouldn't underestimate the potential aggravation around following that process through, particularly where you have an institutional landlord. Because, as we said earlier, there's value for them, and it's tied up in it, and they will hardball.
Yeah.
You don't have a few chats on the phone and get your price.
They're not motivated.
They're not motivated to sell. Also, they're effectively covered for their costs. So they will appoint lawyers who have no incentive really to act economically.
Yeah.
So they will fight every point. They will fight technical points. They will fight valuation points, because their cost is underwritten by the buyer, basically.
Yes.
So on a case like that, I would add in, once you've come to an idea of what your actual lease extension price is, which you can do either by getting advice, or you can use one of the calculators, which gives you a guide available online. You can do the lease calculator, as long as you know what the actual market value is of a lease. I would also budget something like £5,000 for costs on a case like that.
Yeah.
But without
Interesting. If you had to put a number on it?
Remind me of the
300k and value.
190 guide.
57 years. 25k to extend the lease.
150.
How much easier can we do this for you, John?
I suggested 150 guide, but it's actually 190.
This is why. This is why you guys do the trading. I put my money in the building society.
If you ever have someone wanting to sell something like this for 150, send them our way.
Yeah.
Okay, fair point. Jay?
Just to touch on a point that John had mentioned there about the 2-year waiting time is actually, I think in terms of leasehold reform, I think that would be the easiest thing to reform, the abolition of that 2-year waiting time. I don't think it serves any meaningful purpose. I mean, not in today's world. I mean, 1925, whatever, maybe it did. But I think that could either be completely removed or reduced. But going on to the value, I think it's not going to sell under the hammer on the day, but I do think someone will try and do a deal post auction, and I think 170 has the right kind of feel for it. It's an absolutely perfectly viable deal to pick up, even if you're an owner occupier and you have enough cash. You can run the lease extension. You can notify the bank that it has the short lease, and they say, okay, well, we'll lend you X amount as long as X amount goes towards the lease extension.
Can I just remind you, John mentioned it's an institutional seller. No motivation. Just remember that point. No.
But I mean, do
you want to retract your 170? I'm giving you a chance.
I think 170 is good shrift for that flat. And actually, I think if not everything has to go negative. I mean, these guys they do like to push the pennies and the pounds. But actually, if you went in and basically said, look, if the leasehold calculator says it's 25 grand and you just say, and they say, we want 27, pay the 27.
But you and Olivia know how hard-headed these people are. They've probably got a RICS value on it, and the RICS is telling them this. It's a third party, it's arm's length, etc., etc. And the problem is they're not motivated. I've seen so many institutions run something with the exact same guide and reserve 3 or 4 times over. And it's like, if the market is telling you that this is not selling, would you not question the RICS? And they won't question the RICS sometimes. This is my only problem with a lot of the institutional sellers sometimes.
I don't know. I think there's enough noise about, because there's enough noise about the freeholds and leaseholds, especially at this kind of level. Yeah. If they're selling it for a reason. It's at that kind of point where it's still valuable. And I think if they were given an offer post-auction at 170, I think they would consult. I think it may take a little while to get a deal done, but actually this one's in Savills, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think the Savills guys would push for a deal to be done.
That's an important point, is who is the auctioneer as well. You're right, yeah.
And I think they'd push for the deal to be done because the majority of the you wouldn't call them sales progressors, the associate directors at Savills are pretty much all RICS qualified valuers anyway, and you don't get that with every auctioneer in the country, right? And that there are positives and negatives, pros and cons, but in this situation I think they would turn around. I think whoever's handling the sale, if they had to go back to the institutional seller, they would quite happily sign this is a best value price, and I think they'd be able to argue that at 170.
Fair enough.
So I'm going to stick with that. I could be very wrong, but my gut tells me that's where it should
Don't worry, you got John behind you at 150. So
perfect. Yeah. We've also got you at 150 as a cash buyer. You would have picked it up at 150.
That is true.
So we're 20 grand on it as a spread over here. So yeah.
Brilliant. Well, I will agree with Jay, but I'll say we'll sell post auction 180.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
I won't get to 170.
Cool.
Good. I think that's about it about the short leases.
Wraps up the short leases for us.
Wraps up the short leases, and we're gonna reveal the results.
Tell you what, Piotr, post auction, you offer 180 and I'll offer 170. We'll see who gets the deal.
Well, I'll get the deal.
Yes, you would have paid 10 grand more. Well done, congratulations.
Here's me in the background, like my 150 looks pretty attractive.
It's pretty good.
So, congratulations and welcome to this results section of this video. So, we have a winner, a very clear winner with the first short lease flat. On her first appearance on Property Auction Hunters, Olivia got this pretty much right. Olivia predicted that this very short lease flat in Leighton will sell for about 80,000. It actually sold for £78,000, which is pretty incredible given that it's going to be only a few months left at the completion. It sold for 78,000, which actually works out to about £14,000 a month for the duration of this lease until expiry. So that's 78,000. And what we noticed is that there was a document in the legal pack called the Section 42 notice. And that notice was served in November 2023. And according to that notice and the procedure, the freeholder has 2 months to respond, which those 2 months would expire in approximately around 20th of January 2024. And the auction was on the 12th of March, so about 2 months after the date of that expiry. So there would have to be a response from the freeholder, or perhaps the notice was invalid. The freeholder responded with some sort of counterclaim, or just ignored that notice completely because they know it was invalid. We don't know what the situation is. We don't know why the buyer purchased this property, but we are thinking that it could be something to do with the amount of money on that notice, and basically what people think it will cost them to extend that lease for an additional 90 years. So that's what the situation is. The property sold for 78,000. Olivia got it right. If you want Olivia back on the show, make sure comment, Olivia, please come back under this video, and we'll make sure that we invite her to the next shows. Now, the second property, today, on the day of releasing of this video, it's 18th of March. The property is going to be offered in the Savills auction on the 19th of March, which is tomorrow. So basically, watch this space. Click the link below. We included the link to Savills auction page for you to check the results of the video. We were both quite agreeable that this property is not going to sell. So let us know, were we right, were we not right? Make sure you comment underneath this video, and we'll put our commentary as well to that, the results of that auction. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next episode.